Good evening. My name is Jan Dahlman, and I'm representing the League of Women Voters of Holland area, and we wish to welcome you to this candidate forum. On such a snowy night, we're thankful that you've come out. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization which encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The League is open to all citizens of voting age. Tonight's forum features 3 candidates who are seeking to fill the Allegan County's 80th House of Representatives seat on March 8. Representing the Libertarian Party is Arnis Davidson. Representing the Democratic Party is David Gurnett. And representing the Republican Party is Mary Whiteford. Facilitating this forum this evening will be Nikki Ehrenhorst, and our substitute timer is John Gronberg. So with that, I introduce Nikki, who will review the rules for the evening.
Thank you. And thank you, candidates, for showing up, and thank you, members of the audience. And I applaud you for taking your civic duties seriously, especially on such a night. This is a great country, and voting is one of the cornerstones of our democracy. I'm delighted to return as moderator. It seems like we just did this. But the League of Women Voters has a long history of running these kinds of forums. We have a consistent and fair format, and these rules were sent out that I will read, were sent out to all the candidates as part of their contact information. And as moderator, I will now read the rules for everyone. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. A question and answer period will follow. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes for their response to a question. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement at the end of the forum. Time limits will be strictly observed. A 30-second card will show first. When the stop card is shown, the candidate must end his or her statements. The order of who speaks first, second, and third will be determined initially by alphabetical order of the candidates' last names. That's how they're sitting. And rotate thereafter. I keep charge of that, and invariably I mix up, but I'm sure you'll let me know. The audience may direct their questions to one or all candidates. And as Ellen, like our voter service chair, mentioned, we are changing the format a little bit. We go back and forth. Tonight, we're going to allow questions, verbal questions from the audience. So a microphone can go around and you may just ask. In case you're feeling shy, I do have questions that were composed that will help maybe break the ice. You may also go back to what we have done before, and that is write them on a little card, and I will read them. But it's kind of nice to have, you know, a real kind of a town meeting. Okay, questions. So all candidates may answer, even though one question may be directed to only one candidate, all candidates may answer that question after that person has answered. The question should include your name, and if you may just write it on the card. I have not read those in the past. The League will prepare some questions, and we do ask that questions of a personal nature not be asked. Keep the question neutral, information, and not about their lives. And I, as moderator, reserve the right to interrupt the candidates if they get off topic, or they engage in personal attacks, or if the audience is doing something like applauding or clapping or booing, anything like that. Just listen. Otherwise, it interrupts and it distracts. And along with that, we have no campaign signs allowed in the room. And you notice that there's a table outside for those. No cameras or taping equipment is permitted, other than that authorized by the League. This forum is being videotaped. And we have a mechanism, we'll tell you how you can access that. And as a courtesy to everyone, click it off. Turn off your cell phone. No ringing, no buzzing.
Already done.
Thank you. See, the candidates are on task. And that is the end of that. So we will start out with our opening statements. And again, in alphabetical order, we will start with our Libertarian candidate, Arnis Davidsons.
I'm Arnis Davidsons. I am on the ballot this year as Arnie, which is what most people know me as. I am basically running for a few reasons, and that's to give people a choice. If they want to send a thorn in the side to Lansing, I'm the guy you want. My background is not political. I did 30 years with General Motors, 3 different cities, many varied positions, oftentimes positions of serious responsibility. I learned to work with a lot of different people from different backgrounds and how to turn a chaotic day into one where we got the job done. I'm not happy with what's going on in Lansing. We overwhelmingly voted no on a tax increase for the roads, and they rammed it down our throats anyway. I would fight anything like that. I'm for less government, less taxes, less interference. Personal freedom is paramount. As long as you're not interfering with somebody else's personal freedom, do what you want. I know I appear radical. Yes, I do ride a Harley. I'm probably one of the more conservative people up here tonight. So, think about it. And I will end there and let it move on.
Thank you. David Gurnett.
Thank you. I am an angry man tonight. I am angry that kids have been poisoned in Flint, that adults have died of Legionnaire's disease, all because the governor's own appointed emergency manager wanted to save a little money. Has there ever been a declared emergency that was man-made, an emergency that flows so clearly from the decisions and neglect of the man at the top? It's what we get when we hire as our governor someone who doesn't understand that we measure a government's success not by financial bottom line, but by whether its decisions help actual people live better lives. The governor ought to be the people's keeper. I wanted to ask him, Governor, after the poisoning of our neighbors' children, do you feel no sense of shame? You should go, and go now. I'm angry that Michigan state government has been rated number 50 out of all 50 states for transparency and corruption. I'm angry tonight because we have a speaker who governs by fiat, who passes bills without any process when it suits his political purposes. Did you know that he requires that his caucus members sign a pledge that they will vote the party line when he tells them that they must? Mary has pledged that she will be a loyal member of the Speaker's caucus. Say what you will about Cindy Gamrat, but to her credit, she refused to play this game. I am angry that the Speaker brings to the floor in the dead of night, on the last day of the December session, a bill secretly expanded from 13 to 53 pages with no hearings and no time for members to read it. This is the bill, now the law, that prohibits, on pain of criminal arrest, county clerks and librarians from doing their jobs as public officials. This is the caucus that Mary says she will be a loyal member of. This is the leader that she has pledged to follow. This speaker has killed process in Lansing, and that makes me mad.
Thank you. Mary Whiteford.
Hi, my name's Mary Whiteford. I grew up on a small rural farm similar to the Fenville area and went on and got my nursing degree. I got my dream job as a neurosurgical pediatric nurse at a children's hospital and then ended up working in an emergency room there. In the meantime, I raised 3 children and helped my husband start a business. Finally, something had to give because we were working so much that I quit my job and I got really involved in my kids' schools and my local community. It was there I listened to so many teachers and I felt like they didn't have a voice. So I would have to say one of the biggest reasons I got into politics was because of education. I think so much of our attention has gotten away from what we really need to do and allow our children to become self-sufficient adults. So I am just passionate about getting teachers together, figuring out how we can do better with this. I live in Casco Township. My husband and I have been married for 29 years. My kids are older now. They're all adults, and I have a granddaughter as well. So this is the time. I want to be a good voice for them and help make our lives better. It's so important for me because of my education, passion, and then my business experience. And then I've also been very involved in my local municipalities. We need to get all three together on the same page, and that's going to become the success of our children and our future and the economy, and bringing Allegan County forward and make this the place that businesses want to bring their businesses and hire people. That's the most important thing to me, and I just want to work hard and be part of solutions and be on the groundwork to set the standard for policy behind the doors and advance that. And I hope to have your vote.
Thank you. Okay, questions from the audience? All right, a brave soul.
If elected, would you write a law requiring all heavyweight trucks with extra axles for the springtime weight, to use that axle 12 months out of the year, so as to avoid putting extra stress on the roads? Would you write a law, including that law?
Sir, you have to hold that up
Would you,
way to your mouth. Up, yeah.
would you write a law that all future trucks be equipped with extra axle to reduce the road wear? Did you hear the first part that I asked?
Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah.
The first part, if elected, would you write a law requiring all heavyweight trucks with extra axle for springtime weight to use that axle 12 months of the year to reduce the amount of wear on the roads? Because at the past debates we've had here, that question was asked, people were asking about the road conditions. That is one of the problems with the roads. There's too much weight on them.
Did you understand the question?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, and Judge Gernot, you will be the first to answer.
Okay, well, perhaps needless to say, I don't know anything about the issue he just brought up. And that's one of the interesting things about running for this office. With my background, I do not have a background in politics or policy. I was a judge in Portland, Oregon for 16 years, retired in 2008, moved back here 5 years ago. I grew up in Kalamazoo, went through the public schools in Kalamazoo, and graduated from Western Michigan University before going on to Harvard Law School. So I come at this race with a background as a professional listener, somebody who takes issues he knows nothing about, reads up on them, and comes to a conclusion. When I faced issues on the bench that were to be determined without a jury involvement, that is, motions that would come before the judge without a jury, I would get well-prepared briefs, I would read them, come to the bench with questions to clarify my own thought processes and my own views to help me understand the views of the people who were appearing in front of me. And then I would ask them to clarify them for me. So that's what I would do in this instance. If I'm a legislator, I would expect as a committee member to listen to all sides, to make a decision, to cast my vote based on what I thought was best for the people of Allegan County. That's the best I can do. I would read up on your issue if it comes up.
And Mary Whiteford.
So I'm an ER nurse. I know a lot about education and business things. I don't know a lot about the roads and the issues that are happening there. I have developed some good relationships with our road commissioners, and then we have quite a few trucking professionals in our county, and I'd like to know your opinion too. So I can't make a promise like that right now, but I really would like to know more about it so I can make an educated decision.
Thank you. And Mr. Davidson's.
All right, having at one time been a truck driver and worked with them for many years, he raises a valid point. And yeah, if you spread the weight out on more axles, there's definitely less damage to the road. It's something that would have to be looked into and considered. If the truck already has the extra axles and they need to drop them down, maybe we could do that. I don't know. We'd have to have cooperation from enough others to get it passed. I don't know if I would push the matter. I'd want to hear their side of the story too. I also know that having more axles, when you take a corner, you tear up the tires quicker. So it's there's a lot to figure, but you do raise a valid point. It's worth looking into. Spread that weight out. I like the idea. I'll tell you that. As far as a promise, Gonna depend on the rest of the guys too. I'm just one person. You know. That work for you for now? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Here comes the microphone. And be sure to speak. I have to remember to speak right into it.
I'm Julie Cowie. I'm a resident of Casco Township. I'd like to know your vision for Allegan County. If elected, what would you work for? What would you want to see happen here in our county?
And we start with Mary Whiteford.
Well, on top of my vision for education and getting a voice in for teachers and coming up with a plan from the grassroots, one thing I've been working on is our incredible Kalamazoo River. It's got a lot of challenges and bringing attention to that. So I got local municipality leaders, like Mike Vandenberg here too from Gunplain Township, but Allegan and Plainwell and Otsego, and then it goes all the way up into Saugatuck, of course, and getting, we're actually working on getting them together. They've started that already. They worked on getting a grant to form a group to be able to go after some of these big grants that are out there. It's been estimated if we fully utilize the Kalamazoo River, it could bring $200 million into our county a year. So that's one vision, is say, look, we have an incredible natural resource besides the lakefront. We've got this river, and let's build on that. So our education, making sure our kids are prepared for good jobs. And then I really want to work on making sure that economic development comes to our county. So I've been working with Norbel Goyen with at the county level for economic development. And let's get people talking. And I'll reach out. I'll be an ambassador and try to get some businesses out here. I'm pretty fearless.
Thank you. I think I've mixed the order up already. We'll go back to you, Mr. Davidsons. And then
Thought
we'll
you were
just start
doing
over.
okay so far.
Well, anyhow, so can you
My
answer?
turn?
Yes, sir.
Well, Mary, I did point out some nice possibilities there. From where I live on the eastern edge of the county, the big issue we've got there is a lack of work. I got a lot of young people in their late 20s, early 30s that are having a heck of a time finding any kind of a job, and if they do, it's a temporary. If we can find something we can do to get more jobs in Allegan County without turning it into an industrial park, we still want to keep the rural flavor, but there's got to be work available or everyone's going to leave. Beyond that, I haven't given it much further thought, sorry.
Okay, and Judge Gurnett.
Your question sort of reminds me of the first George Bush. I'm not much on the vision thing. And I'm sorry about that. Mary sounds like she has had some experiences and has devoted some time to these issues. I have talked to people about the Saugatuck Dunes. They certainly need to be preserved. I've talked to people in that area about the issues involving the dredging of the Saugatuck Harbor in such a way that it is done in a conservation-friendly way and yet in a way that will preserve and improve the economy of the city of Saugatuck. Apparently the harbor is not deep enough for people with their pleasure boats to put in anchor, and so if it is not dredged at some point, the city of Saugatuck is going to lose a lot of their tourism, and there are technical problems involved in that, which apparently is going to take a long time to unravel. People have been working on it a long time. I live on the Kalamazoo River, so I want to see that preserved, and when there are oil spills, I hope we clean them up sooner than the last one was cleaned up. So I guess I'm not prepared to answer that at this point. One thing I have thought about, which is not a vision, is to open a district service office in Allegan County, which I was going to mention in my closing statement, but I'll mention it now. It has not been established here, and I think it would serve the purposes of the people a lot better than an office in Lansing.
Thank you. Okay, another question from the audience, and then we'll read a question that was written from the audience.
I would like to ask, primarily because of gerrymandering, and Michigan is one of the primary states in the country that is controlled by gerrymandering, meaning that we assign voting districts based on who's going to win in that district, and Michigan is overwhelmingly gerrymandered toward the Republicans. And I would like to know if any of you were to go to the house in Lansing, would you be willing to stand up to the people there on the floor with your views about the mean-spiritedness toward the middle class and the poor people, and the fact that Michigan is so geared to helping the rich and the industrial people in the state? And would you be willing to call people out on what they're doing with their anger and the things that they do against the poor and middle class?
Okay, we're going to start back in alphabetical order. Mr. Davidson's.
Turn, okay. Sir, you bring up a valid point that has bugged me for years. And I would, if I had an opportunity, I would stand up and call people out on it. Because it's a load of crap. Everything is done to guarantee certain people can get reelected, and not for, they don't care about us. You already know that, though. No. I'm gonna be honest, might offend some of you, get over it. I have a mixed race family, so I know what you're talking about people going against the middle class and the poor and the other races. So, yeah, I would speak up. May not win, but I'd speak up. I don't owe anybody up there any favors. Want anything else? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Judge Ganant.
I think I touched on those issues in my opening statement. We have a governor who's governing for the benefit of the rich. He's done that since he got in office. I think what I said in my opening statement, if I'm elected, is going to precede me by the time I get to Lansing. I don't think it's going to be any surprise to anybody that I would take the stands that I do. And yes, I would confront people over these issues. We have a speaker who brings bills out that have not been vetted. He's killed process, as I said. As to reapportionment, I understand that an academic group, national group, did a study of reapportionment, redistricting at the state level for state legislative seats and congressional seats between 1970 and 2010, without any regard for which party was benefiting from redistricting, because it can vary from state to state. And their conclusion was that Michigan is the second worst gerrymandered state in the country during those 40 years. Here it seems to, well, not seems to, it does benefit the Republicans. If you add up the number of votes cast for Democratic candidates and the number of votes cast for Republican candidates for both the State House and the U.S. Congress, Democratic voters are vastly underrepresented. We need, and I'm in favor of, a nonpartisan commission to do reapportionment. I believe it's Arizona that has pioneered that effort, and it has been affirmed by the U.S. Supreme Court that that is an okay thing to do. It's going to be on our ballot. You can't get this through the legislature, of course, but it will be on our ballot at some point. I think not this year, but probably in 2 years.
Thank you. And Mary Whiteford.
As for the gerrymandering, we're in the luxury of having a more rural district, so you can't do a lot of gerrymandering here. I'm in favor of a nonpartisan approach to defining our congressional lines and our district lines. As for the lack of focus and attention and care for our middle class and our lower class, I worked as an emergency room nurse in an inner city hospital. I took care of children from every walk of life. We're all just people. Our parents are just trying to take care of their children. I've worked really hard for human trafficking, and I've got a big conference coming up this weekend for the county, for Allegan and Ottawa County. I'm also on the Michigan Women's Commission, so I've been doing some work for veterans, and I sponsored a veterans fair for Allegan County. So I'm a nurse, I care. I'm going to try to do my best, and I truly believe in the Bible verse, how you treat the least of my brothers is how you treat me. And every single decision I make, I will base on that.
Thank you. Okay, and I'm going to read a question that was given to us by a member of the audience. There was a petition to repeal Michigan Prevailing Wage Act by a group called Protect Michigan Taxpayers. They hired a group to gather signatures, spending $1.5 million. The Michigan Bureau of Elections Board denied the petition as 50,000 names were duplicates. 59% were deemed invalid. Now this group is set to try again. There are many pros and cons on prevailing wage. Where do you, the candidates, stand on prevailing wage, and what are the facts that support your choice? And we start with Judge Gernot on this one.
Just so I'm clear about terminology, prevailing wage is the same as minimum wage? Or
No.
not? I don't know. I'm asking.
Okay, does someone, the person, care to explain this?
It's where you're asking to, if you take a state or federal contract, it's where the school districts or municipalities have to pay the union wage.
Ah.
It's union wage versus
Right.
the company setting the wage.
well.
Yes.
That's easy for me then. Yes, I think that should be required.
Prevailing wage should be required. Okay. Anything, care to elaborate, or we'll move
Nope,
on?
nope.
Okay. Mary Whiteford?
Short and sweet.
I'm a business owner. We built our building in South Haven. When we were looking for contractors, we shopped around and we went with the person who gave us the most value for our money. And I think it's short-sighted to have a minimum amount for that. I understand that Standard has a certain rate among our workers, but I also see it from a school viewpoint, where here's the schools have the taxpayer money coming in, and they need to get as much value to the taxpayer dollar, and that amount should not be inflated. It's proven that amount, we could have saved the schools so much money by not having prevailing wage. So I think it's a conservative viewpoint to not have prevailing wage.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Davidson's.
It's a complicated issue because the prevailing wage idea was to make sure that the local workers were not undercut by somebody from out of town. The flip side is, as she pointed out, the local district paying for it is gonna have to pay a lot more. Bottom line, that's not free market. You know, and I'm a union man, so I get it, all right? But it's not free market to require a set price to be paid. And plus it costs the taxpayers money. I mean, I do feel for the workers, being one of them. So it's a complicated, rough decision.
Okay, thank you. An oral question from the audience. Anyone? And speak right into that microphone. Thank you. You're next.
Hi, I'm Kim Byers. I live in Allegan. Just kind of a statewide question about, on the eastern side of the state, we have a big Mid-Eastern population, and we're just wondering your opinion on bringing immigrants, refugees from Syria and the Mid-East in.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Whiteford.
I think it's really important to make sure that our borders are safe and that everybody goes through due process before they come onto our soil. I don't believe that our gates should be open, but I also don't believe that we should block out everybody because, my grandparents were from Ireland. Most of us, our families were immigrants. I think we need to have an open thought process about it, but always make sure that we keep our citizens safe.
Thank you. Mr. Davidson's.
Mary pretty much summed up my opinion, and I have strong feelings about this because my own parents were refugees from Latvia after World War II. But they followed the process, they came legally, they made every effort to assimilate. I don't even speak the language. So you gotta do it right. You can't lock the door, but you can't leave the gate open either. So it's something that needs to be worked on.
Okay, thank you. Judge Gernot.
I didn't hear in the question, but I'm going to assume you're asking about refugees and not so much immigrants. All of the immigration issues are federal issues. The states have no say at all. All of these 26 or 30 governors who a few weeks ago said they don't welcome Syrian refugees in their states, thank goodness have no decision-making authority.
You are correct.
I understand from what I have read and heard since this issue came to the fore a few months ago that the federal government has a rigorous vetting process for refugees from anywhere, and it takes 2 years to get them approved to come in. So with that understanding, I don't see a problem. I understand that Michigan has, I believe, a higher concentration of Arabs and or Muslims than any other state, and so if they're admitted anywhere in the country, the logical assumption is they will, many of them will wind up coming here just because of family and cultural connections. I think that's appropriate. I'm not afraid of Syrian refugees. I've traveled in 7 or 8 majority Muslim countries, and I'm very comfortable. Not an issue for me.
Thank you.
We have a follow-up question for prevailing wage.
Very good.
Yes, I would like to, it always seems that everybody talks about if we pay our workers more, then we take away from somebody else, education, whatever. However, if we keep prevailing wage and give our workers a better wage, we increase the economy immensely. Most business or construction tradespeople, they're either union or non-union. The union people train these tradespeople for their job. We lose good workers because we don't have good wages. We also need to, personally, we need an increase in salaries for everyone. We are really, really behind the 8 ball when we don't let people have more money for the jobs they're doing, and it just takes away from our economy. I would like to know where you stand on that. I mean, I know you've said that you don't want the raises for them, but where do you see it helping your economy when you don't do that?
And Mr. Davidson's.
I think you may have misunderstood what I said, but what I said probably was clear as mud anyway. I am still UAW, so I understand it from the side of the workers. I agree. Workers have been cheated for the last 20 years on wages. The flip side is, whoever here gets elected, we're taking the money out of your pocket. I mean, so all I'm saying, it's a rough choice. I agree. We should be paying fair. We shouldn't be trying to pay slave labor. Not at all. How much are you willing to give up? If you're willing to give it up, cool. Then it's your choice. Go ahead.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
We're just responding.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Try to answer the question as best you can. Okay, are you,
Best I can tell you, hon.
okay. And Judge?
Well, until I hear more argument one way or the other, I don't see it as a difficult question. It's a matter of justice to the workers. And yes, it comes out of public money, but public money is there to be spent appropriately. And I just don't see the problem.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Whiteford?
I grew up, my dad was a union Boilermaker, so I understand. But I also know that we cannot spend more than what we make. And we need to make sure that whatever money we have, we live within our means, and you get paid for the work that you do. That's why I'm spending so much time making sure that our kids are educated, making sure that they're prepared for jobs. And that's going to be my focus.
Okay, thank you. One question from the back. Speak right into the microphone.
We recently had legislation passed, signed by the governor. We didn't have a representative there to vote on it, but it was to prevent public boards, when there was going to be a tax increase, or like a school board to go for a bond proposal, they're not allowed to give information about that within 60 days of that election. Had you been our representative, how would you have voted on that proposal?
Okay, and that is proposal 571 then. And Judge Gurnett?
Well, I spoke directly to that in my opening statement. It's reprehensible. And when you talk about how many votes it takes to get something passed, the only reason the Speaker has been able to bully these bills through the legislature since these 3 vacancies were created, we have one here, one in Lapeer County, and then a Democrat resigned to run the Democratic Party. So 3 vacancies. It's got 107 members. It takes 54 votes to pass a bill with 107 members. It takes 56 with the full complement of 110. The bills he's been passing include the road fix, this 571 bill. He's passed with 54 votes and 55 votes because he has 9 members of his caucus that he can't depend on. That's why this election is so important. If you elect me, he doesn't have his 56th vote to do this kind of stuff. And maybe Mary is going to contradict what I said in my opening, and she can depart from what the speaker wants her to do when he wants her to do something, but she has said in the past she will be a strong and loyal member of the Speaker's caucus. And so I don't know where that leaves us, but if you elect me, he's not going to have his 56th vote.
Thank you. Ms. Whiteford.
Just a quick response. I've never pledged any oath to anybody but God and my husband. So nothing else, but I've never made any pledge like that. So what I can
Judge,
bring-
excuse me,
It's my
excuse me,
turn.
this is not a debate between candidates. Ms.
So
Whiteford.
this is what I can bring to caucus, is that I co-chaired a bond in South Haven for the schools there. We knew very clearly that we could not use public money to campaign. So we set up a separate fund, and I co-signed on that checkbook, and that's what we used to try to convince people to vote for the bond. And then the school district gave the factual information and never tried to sway anybody. That's what we were doing before. And that's what I would bring to the conversation in caucus and say, look, we were already covered, we were already doing the right thing. Just because there's one school district that's not, that doesn't mean you go and change all the rules for the whole state. And that's the kind of conversation that I will bring up.
Thank you. And back to Mr. Davidson's.
Basically, that was another one of them laws we really didn't need. Because, as Mary pointed out, we already had something in place. They can't spend money from the tax dollars to push a vote. Giving out information shouldn't be an issue. Or set up a separate fund, do it that way. So it is what it is.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to read a question, and then we'll go to another oral question. You will be asked to deal with the Flint water crisis. Investigations will be conducted to find who all was at fault. Knowing what you know now, what is the state of Michigan's responsibility to the citizens of Flint? And we start with Ms. Whiteford.
What a ball of string, what a mess that whole Flint thing is. And it's been years and years and years of poor decisions. But now we sit here with people getting sick. So number one, I want to get the facts. And the facts are, what are the lead levels in each home and where it's coming into municipalities. And let's address it. It's difficult because we live in communities that we live within our means. If we have an issue that comes up, we take care of it. And some people made some very poor decisions years and years ago, which culminated in more poor decisions. But what are we going to do? We have to address the safety of, the lesser of our brothers, right? So I think it's really important that we address that as well. But we really need to get people to live within their means, to be safe, to do their jobs and not sweep it under the rug. And so I'm not going to point fingers at one person, but all I know is that we do have to address this, and we need to figure this out, and we need to use this as an example to other communities, because now we're finding out that other communities have lead in their water. So let's be science-based, let's get this taken care of, and let's move on to the next issue that we have to address, and that's our people here too.
Thank you. Mr. Davidson's.
I essentially agree with Mary on this. All I can really add is that I did live in Flint for 8 years due to my work, and it was scary how mismanaged that city was. I'm not trying to point the blame. It goes a lot farther than just that. They were spoiled by many, many years of GM being based there. And as the company left and they lost tax base, they still kept spending like they still had it. Doesn't do any good to punish people for it. We do have to find a way to fix it. I'm not sure what the answer is. Like she said, we need more information on what can be done and what it will cost.
Okay, thank you. Judge Gurnett.
Well, I sure don't disagree that the problem needs to be fixed, but also blame needs to be fixed. And with the governor's State of the State speech the other night, in his timeline, the first person he blamed, first people, were the City Council of Flint. And this was after he had appointed his emergency manager. Well, emergency managers supplant the elected officials, so it didn't matter what the City Council decided. It was his person on the spot who made the decision. And his people, he claimed, refrained from telling him until last September. Well, there's something wrong with his timeline, because his chief of staff sent him an email 6 months before that, and I don't get that. He said blithely in his State of the State speech that he has 3 years to get this fixed. Excuse me, I don't think so. He needs to leave now because of what he has done. He needs to take responsibility and leave office. That's the beginning of the fix. Now, to help the people of Flint, obviously we're going to have to spend a boatload of money, and not only now to fix the pipes, but we've got children who've been poisoned, and they're going to live into the next century. The state is going to have to set up a fund that will grow to hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, to take care of them over their lifetime. This governor will wind up having cost this state more than any governor in history just because of this one mistake.
Thank you. Okay, question from the audience?
Hi, I'm Penny. I live in Allegan. Just to piggyback off of the Flint crisis, to piggyback off of that, the emergency manager system is one of the few in the entire nation where the state can do that. Do you support, considering it's going to cost us so much more money, and the blame game is going to go back and forth, but the big 8 ball in this is the emergency manager decision. Do you support that, and is that process of taking over places like Benton Harbor, Flint, and there was another one, Pontiac, I think, that was taken over? Do you support that whole system? Because now we're all more culpable for bad decisions maybe that were made at the local level, but we needed more government to take over and made those economic decisions. Do you support the emergency manager situation? And also, Michigan is 48th in terms of the FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, and we have such a lack of transparency. We're the 48th state in the
Those are
nation.
2 questions.
Yeah, I just want to ask you what you guys think of FOIA as well.
Yeah.
All right, let's start with Mr. Davidson's. Let's answer the
I'll go ahead and
emergency
respond
manager.
for you. The emergency manager thing is a whole load of crap. It should have never even happened. That people are supposed to take care of their own business, and if they end up bankrupt, they end up bankrupt. Then they'll re-elect or elect some, maybe elect some people that can get it done right. And as far as the Freedom of Information thing, there is no reason on earth that all those meetings in Lansing should be secret and free from being viewed. It should not be like that. I would fight that if I was elected. Good enough?
Okay, thank you. Judge Gurnett.
Yeah, well, the Freedom of Information Act obviously has to apply to the legislature, its committees, to the governor's office, to people who work for the governor. The governor, in his State of the State speech, said that he would release his personal emails for back so many months. And he may be doing that, he may have done that. But the emails of his staff, he's considered, and he said, words along these lines, that they are their private emails and they're not going to be released. Well, if the FOIA applied to the governor's office, they would be available. That's just wrong. I don't know why this is a partisan issue or why it's developed as a partisan issue, but certainly there are many Republicans who agree with me that the FOIA should apply to government. And in most other states, it certainly does. The other issue is emergency managers. Difficult issue. They existed under Governor Granholm. The bill that was passed under Governor Snyder, as I understand it, strengthened the emergency manager's powers. It might be time to relook at the whole system, given what's happened in Flint. Certainly the governor had a great success with his emergency manager in Detroit. I don't like the idea of emergency managers, and on the other hand, they've done some good.
Okay, Ms. Whiteford.
In Allegan County, we've been blessed that really we have good local leaders who are managing things and keeping, we're all living within our means, we're getting things done to the best of our ability. There are some areas in our state where they do not have local officials who have the best interest of their citizens as their priority. And so sometimes we need to intervene when the taxpayer money is not being spent properly. So in that case, an emergency manager stepping in when a community could be losing all their money and they still have all the people living there. So emergency managers, when well placed, can help protect the citizens. Will there be exceptions? Of course, there's always exceptions where people are bad, they make poor decisions, they do the wrong thing. But we cannot legislate to those exceptions when there's other communities doing well. So that's why I think the emergency manager system, when used properly, works. The FOIA, it's taxpayer money. We need to know where our taxpayer money is going. I will always be transparent. You can come to me and ask me anything, and I will be honest. I can't help myself.
Okay, thank you. Question from the audience.
Hi, this is Kevin Whiteford. I just have a question about education. Education, not only in this state but this county, is, I think, and for most people, something that we need to work on. So my question is, what experiences do you have to bring to the table with regards to experiences with teachers and superintendents or whatever within this county and within this state to try to help us do a much better job teaching our children?
Thank you. And we will go with Judge Granat for that.
I have some experience as a parent and a grandparent. This was in Oregon because I lived out there for most of my adult life. And so when the kids were in school, I was heavily involved with PTA and activities of that sort. I don't have as much knowledge of the situation here in Michigan or Allegan County. I did make a point of meeting with all of the Allegan County superintendents the other day and got a good briefing from them. And that was extremely helpful. Another example of how I'm going around listening. I've been conducting what Hillary Clinton years ago in New York called a listening tour of the county, because there's so much that I didn't know when I started the campaign and so much I still don't know. I'm going around to township board meetings and county commission meetings and listening. As to education, I am a major supporter of the public education system. I think we have too many charter schools. I think for-profit charter schools should not exist. I think it's wrong to be privatizing our education system. I'm a product of public schools and public university. And when I got married, my wife brought two wonderful boys into the marriage who were attending private schools. And I said to her, this doesn't make sense to me. And for better or worse, she listened. They were then going into 5th and 7th grade, and we took them to public schools that they'd be going to the summer before they entered, and they graduated from public schools. I'm a big public school supporter. Mary's campaign is being supported by the Great Lakes Education Project,
Okay,
which is not.
And let's keep to our own views and our own policies and the candidates, just not a debate up here. Yes, and Ms. Whiteford.
When I was helping in my kids' schools, it made me think about when I worked as a nurse. We worked in a hospital. We were valued for what we thought and what we did. So we set our own policies, procedures, best practices. I went to national conferences, read journals, and I was proud of the work I did. So then when I went in and helped in my children's schools and I saw how the legislature was pushing things down, so it was such a top-down approach, and the teachers weren't asked for their opinion. So as I went door to door, made it to about 10,000 homes over 2 years. So many of the people there are teachers and so frustrated and telling their kids not to go into education, and who's going to help our children learn and be prepared for their future. So that's why I've promised the teachers that I would come together and have an education summit and just listen. Even years ago, I heard that a legislator did a similar thing but had their own agenda, and the teachers weren't listened to at all. So that's why it's so important to me to empower our professionals to make these decisions and come up with, I call it a blank slate theory. If it was a blank slate, how would we best do this? I'm not going to get it overnight, but I can start budging it that direction. And that's what I really want to do and keep coming back to. And in my first campaign, I met with every superintendent in the entire county, which is a lot, but that's really important to me. I know my limitations, and I need to ask my professionals for their input.
Thank you. And Mr. Davidson's.
All right. My only experience dealing with the schools is my time in it and when all my kids went through it. And I'm going to tell you right now, honestly, I'm not a big fan of public schools. For one, There is way too much time and money being spent dealing with orders from above that, for people that don't even live in the area. Lansing, Washington, whatever. I'm a free market proponent. I think it should be easier for you to opt out of the public school, whether it be to a charter, a private, a homeschool, whatever. With the internet, you can find anything you need there. You can teach your kids just fine. If you don't like my answer, sorry about that.
Okay, thank you. Another question, I have 3 questions up here. So, yeah, there's a question here. And then the next one, we'll do 2 up here. Right into the microphone.
Hi, I'm Mike Vandenberg. I'm the supervisor for Gunplain Charter Township. And one of the questions I get from my citizens is, what are you doing for broadband, high-speed internet? So my question to you tonight is, what can you do to help us? We're a rural township, and our school district sent home iPads to help educate our kids, but the problem is a lot of our kids can't get access, affordable access. So what will you do to help us at the local level to be able to provide that?
Thank you. And we start with Ms. Whiteford.
Yeah, Mike and I were talking about that last week. What's interesting, I was at a Grand Rapids event, and they had some innovator that they had a weather balloon, and they had the high-speed internet being broadcast from the weather balloon. When we built our house, we wired the whole house. Now everything's Wi-Fi. I know one of the challenges is the line of sight, that they can't get the broadband across to that. So I think there's innovative ways to do this. I think it's really important for every single home to have internet access. I don't know the solution, but I want to get in and keep listening and seeing about the new things that are coming up. Besides broadband, we also have natural gas. It's crazy that we can't have natural gas throughout our county, and we rely on propane. I really want to get in on those committees and figure out how can we make sure that our citizens are getting these resources that are fiscally responsible. I mean, it's so much cheaper to get natural gas. It's so important to have that connectivity. And I want to see where we can go with that. Maybe we don't have to have hard lines. Maybe we can have a weather balloon or something. But I really want to make sure and see how we can tap into new innovations.
Thank you. Mr. Davidson's.
Our biggest problem on that here is that we are a rural county. So if they want to do anything like lay cables, they're talking miles and miles and miles of it for very few people. But we do need to have it. Even where I live, my signal is sporadic. I may get it, I may not. Something's got to be done. The market is working on that. I don't have the answer for you today. Sorry.
Okay. Judge Granat.
I certainly agree that the county should have broadband access throughout the county. Mike, are you saying that you think the legislature can and should be doing something to assist counties in this area?
We need a microphone. And we don't usually do this, but this requires a little explanation.
What happened, I think it was 2007, AT&T came to the legislature and had, in the franchise agreements, local units had the power, if a certain number of houses were built in an area, they had to build out the lines. When AT&T came in, they did away with that provision. It took that power away from us local units of government. So now, there's areas in the county where there's houses that would meet that requirement and they refuse to bring the lines out. So that's one issue. We need some help maybe looking at that franchise agreement, get that back in so us locals can be able to force that build out if there's a certain number of houses in a certain radius.
I'm certainly open to any ideas. It sounds like Mary is too. And
We all are.
Yeah, I don't know what the solution is if it's not happening, and whether state dollars should be spent on one county's lack of access to this. I don't know. Something we need to talk about.
Thank you. Okay, 2 questions here, one of which is kind of a yes or no. Do you support no reason absentee voting? And we'll start with Mr. Davidson's.
Yes.
Judge Granat.
Well, you're asking someone who lived for 36 years in a state that invented